deep within the Atlantic Ocean. The hot sun blazed down on a tiny raft. This was all that was left of Steven Callahan's boat. Now, he was all alone, floating on the vast ocean after his boat sank. Could you survive? Battered and adrift, Steven Callahan faced the crushing elements, relentless hunger, and the ever-present threat of lurking predators. For 76 days, he fought for his life. This is the incredible story of survival against all odds. Hit that like button to see if Steven makes it out alive. The relentless sun hammered down on the small harbor, its heat shimmering like a mirage off the turquoise water. A salty tang hung in the air, a constant reminder of the vast ocean that awaited Steven Callahan. His boat, the Napoleon Solo, bobbed at its mooring, a sleek testament to his dreams. Years of planning and sweat had gone into this vessel. Now, it was time to sever the ties and plunge into the unknown. Yet, as the familiar shoreline faded, something tugged at him, not fear, but a prickling unease. He was venturing beyond leisurely sails and coastal jaunts. This was a voyage that would demand everything. The ocean, once a playful companion, darkened with the first whispers of the gathering storm. Adrenaline thrummed beneath his skin, a heady mix of excitement and the primal fear that only raw nature can unleash. Steven was a skilled sailor, but this was different. This was the ocean flexing its might. A brutal twist of wind slammed the Napoleon Solo sideways, the boat groaning under the sudden strain. Waves swelled to monstrous heights, their foaming crests clawing at the darkening sky. He scrambled, weathered hands moving in practiced patterns against the unyielding storm. Rain lashed down like icy needles. Thunderclaps boomed around him, their vibrations rattling his very bones. But even amidst this chaos, a stubborn fire burned within him. To surrender now seemed impossible. He was made for more than this. Lightning tore the sky open, a blinding scar illuminating the fury. Then, a sound like a gunshot. The mainmast splintered, wood exploding outward, sails whipping like the wings of a wounded bird. He was thrown across the deck, the taste of salt and blood a bitter echo of the ocean's power. Clinging to the wreckage, Steven watched his dreams disintegrate. The Napoleon Solo, no longer his vessel of freedom, was a toy in the sea's relentless grasp. The ocean wasn't a playground anymore. It was a merciless foe, indifferent to his struggle. But he was alive. Battered and bleeding, yes, but alive. And amidst that stark terror, a flicker of defiance rose within him. If a breath remained in his lungs, he would keep fighting. Dawn crept over the storm-ravaged sea, offering no solace, only stark confirmation of his predicament. Bobbing amidst a field of splintered wood and tangled netting, Steven clung to what remained of the Napoleon Solo. The sun, his welcome companion just days ago, now felt like a pitiless tormentor. Its relentless rays baked his exposed skin, turning any fleeting breeze into a furnace blast. His tongue felt like leather in his mouth. Thirst, an insidious foe, gnawed at his resolve. The salt was everywhere, a constant, abrasive reminder of his vulnerability. Each rasping breath left a burn in his lungs, and his muscles throbbed with a deep, agonizing ache. Sharks, sleek shadows beneath the surface, began to circle. Their presence fueled a primal terror, a reminder that he'd been thrust into the bottom of the food chain. The ocean, once a realm of dreams, now felt like a vast, hungry tomb. Each wave that washed over the wreckage felt like a crushing blow, a reminder of his utter insignificance. He was adrift, alone, at the mercy of forces beyond his control. What had been an adventure was now a nightmare. But buried beneath the weight of his dire situation, a stubborn ember refused to extinguish. He wasn't just a victim cast into the waves. He was a sailor, battered, but not broken. He forced himself to inventory the pitiful remnants of his boat. A tattered sail, a few lengths of rope, the splintered remains of his oars, meager tools, yet they were all he had. And with the desperation of a drowning man, he began lashing pieces of wood together to create a more stable raft. Movement gave him focus, a distraction from the terror clawing at his mind. Each knot he tied, each ragged plank he secured, felt like a small victory against an overwhelming adversary. The sun began its merciless descent, the shadows stretching long across the water. He was far from rescued, but he had survived another day. And with that simple, bitter triumph, a sliver of hope found purchase. His raft was a floating testament to desperation, a patchwork of splintered wood and tangled netting. It sagged lower in the water with each passing day, the relentless gnawing of the waves a constant threat. Each frayed rope, each waterlogged plank, signaled impending doom. Every creak and groan became a symphony of his inevitable demise. Repairing the raft was a constant battle, an endless cycle of patching, lashing, and bailing. Salt water ate away at his makeshift knots, the sun baking the wood until it splintered. He fought a war of attrition against the relentless forces of the sea, knowing one lapse could be fatal. The tedium of maintenance gnawed at his sanity. Sleep came in shallow snatches, haunted by nightmares. He woke with his heart pounding, his hands instinctively reaching for worn ropes and weakened spars. Sometimes the urge to give up, to let the sea claim him, was almost overwhelming. But as he looked at his ragged, blistered hands, a testament to his struggle, defiance flared within him. The raft, flawed and fragile as it was, represented his refusal to vanish without a trace. Each desperate repair was an act of rebellion against the indifference of the ocean. One day, a storm gathered on the horizon, and a sickening lurch tore a patch of wood free. He lashed together replacements in a frenzy, but it felt hopeless. The raft was disintegrating. A cruel reflection of his own dwindling strength, the raft seemed to fall apart around him. As another plank snapped, despair threatened to overwhelm him. He sank to his knees, defeated. But then, amidst the chaos, he saw it, a glint of metal beneath a tangle of rope. Steven's struggle just got real. Can he keep this raft together? Hit that like button to show you're on his side. His father's old fishing knife, lost in the chaos of the storm, a weathered piece of his old life, a lifeline. Clutching the knife, he felt a surge of defiance. He wasn't defeated yet. As long as he could patch, as long as he could fight, there was still hope against this uncaring sea. Days blurred into one another, measured not by time but by his nagging hunger. Hunger transformed from a persistent ache into an all-consuming obsession. Dreams became a cruel parade of tantalizing feasts, dissolving into despair upon waking. Schools of fish shimmered just below the surface, a glittering promise out of reach. He fashioned crude spears from splintered wood, rigged makeshift hooks with scraps of netting. But his trembling hands lacked precision, his weakened body slowed to react. Each splash, each ripple sent a surge of adrenaline, only to be replaced by crushing disappointment. He clung to the raft, watching with vacant fascination as birds swooped to snatch their prizes with effortless ease. Every failed attempt chipped away at his resolve. He forced himself to think, to observe. He noted the patterns of the fish, the birds' behaviors. With painstaking effort, he refined his tools, movements slow, fueled by the desperate need to outwit his elusive prey. Then, one day, a stroke of luck, or perhaps the reward of sheer persistence, a flash of silver, a tug on his line. He hauled in his catch, a small, wriggling fish, barely enough for a seagull. But in that moment, it was a feast. Raw and briny, it slid down his throat, fueling both body and spirit. The victory was fleeting. One small fish couldn't stave off starvation for long. But in that single bite, he tasted a reprieve, proof that he could survive, that perhaps he might just outlast this cruel, indifferent sea. The raft was disintegrating, a reflection of his own fading strength. Waves washed over him more frequently. Sharks lurked nearby, sleek shadows beneath the seemingly beautiful blue water, turning the ocean into a menacing arena. With each passing day, they grew bolder. No longer content with scraps, they circled brazenly, their dark eyes fixated on his fragile raft. Each ripple, each seemingly innocuous splash, fueled his terror. Was that a curious fin, or the prelude to an attack? He tried to deter them, splashing, shouting feebly. But they remained indifferent, maddening in their disregard. His skin, a roadmap of burns and peeling flesh, offered no protection from the relentless elements. Thirst was a constant torment. His tongue shriveled, his throat burning with each shallow breath. Mirages played cruel tricks, shimmering islands that dissolved into the agonizing expanse of blue. Had he drifted so far that even hallucination offered no respite? He clung to the wreckage, his muscles screaming, his mind flickering on the edge of delirium. The sharks seemed to sense his weakness, their circles closing in. He was no longer the defiant survivor, but a feast waiting to be claimed. Time lost all meaning. Days blurred into a haze of pain, his existence reduced to staying afloat, fending off predators. He screamed curses at the uncaring sky, his voice a rasping whisper swallowed by the vast emptiness. Then a flicker on the horizon, a smudge against the endless blue. Ship, or another cruel trick of his tormented mind. The ship appeared from the fog, a giant made of steel. It was a sign of rescue, a way out of his watery trap. He screamed, a raw, desperate sound to show how much he needed help. His shaking hands struggled with his flares. 1, 2, 3 bursts of red shot into the sky. Had they seen it? Or was this another fleeting hope destined to be cruelly extinguished? The ship was altering course, turning towards him. He squinted, tears blurring his vision. It was real. He wasn't going to die here, alone and forgotten in this watery wasteland. Voices reached him over the water, a happy noise that barely covered the pounding of his own heart. Rough hands pulled him onto the ship, and a blanket wrapped around his shaking body, bringing warmth. He was alive. He had made it. The storm, the sharks, the hunger. It all felt like a bad dream fading away in this amazing moment. The ocean, once his enemy, now looked small below him. Back with other people, he was changed forever. His scars on his body and in his mind would always remind him of his struggle. They would also remind him how strong a person can be. If this story touched your heart, show your support by giving this video a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button for more inspiring tales.